The most controversial sporting event in history. It's extraordinary. It is the World Cup. It's less than 100 days away now. Yes, some of you are going, please don't tell me about it till November, but it's already bubbling up and momentum is moving. And we have an issue already arising. It has been held in Qatar, of course, or Qatar it's often called. They didn't become a footballing power, but they won the rights to host the tournament a number of years ago, and it has been mired in controversy ever since. And a new report in the London Independent today says none of the 31 qualified federations have yet endorsed the Pay Up FIFA campaign, leading to criticism from human rights groups that the game is shirking its responsibility as part of a mere checkbox exercise. What is this? Well, this is an attempt to give some compensation to the migrant workers who, as you will know if you've been following the story, have suffered very significant and severe human rights abuses in the preparation for this tournament. A number of international teams have said they're going to mark in some way these issues when the tournament rolls around. We've had some comments from Harry Kane, the England captain, on that front, but we've yet to know what they're going to do. And these federations don't seem to be doing a whole lot in the meantime. So what's the tournament going to be like? And are these issues going to continue to bubble before we get to that famous opening ceremony? Here to discuss that is Miguel Delaney. He's chief football writer at The Independent. First of all, good evening, Miguel.
Good evening.
This is a huge event. We're already, a good bit out yet, but we all kind of thought Qatar getting the tournament was a huge surprise. There was a lot of talk about sort of making it better because everyone feels a bit sort of nervous about this, feels a little bit morally compromised that they won this tournament in the first place. And there was that sense that, look, when we get there, things will be fixed up. They won't be quite as bad as the earlier publicity had indicated. But based on your reporting, the global federations of the different countries, they don't seem to be doing a whole lot ahead of this tournament opening up.
No, that's it. And I mean, there's so many points of controversy around this tournament, from why it's being staged, which is basic kind of sports washing as it's called now, or kind of a propaganda aims, to the manner it was won, given the US Justice Department has made allegations of bribery, but right down to the very nature of the tournament, because even beyond previous international tournaments, there's always controversy around construction, around stadiums being built all the time, all of that. But like, this goes way beyond that, because this tournament could not take place without a labour system that involves scores of migrant workers being denied basic human rights, and that number is into the tens of thousands. Even as regards deaths, with many of them say related to the issues like working in the extreme heat of the Qatar summer. Well, The Guardian has had a lot of controversy for saying it's there's been 6,500 deaths, and that's one point that Qatar always argues. But the only reason they can argue that is because there hasn't yet been any proper investigation into deaths, and that's one of the things that's at the centre of this campaign that the human rights groups have come together for, which is basically for issues like this to be investigated, and from that for proper compensation to be given to the migrant workers. Now, actually, in actual fact, the campaign doesn't go that far. All they've said is basically for FIFA to match the prize money that's given out for the tournament, which comes to about £360 million sterling. So what's that, just about over €400 million, for that to be given to migrant workers. And that's actually a rare case because, I mean, I suppose as people can imagine, all the various different human rights groups have their own various concerns. Like, some are working in the hotel industry, some are basically just kind of general human rights, like Amnesty. And because one of the things the federations said to these groups was, we can't all deal with you individually, you have to come together for a unified message. They've done that, and there's still no response from the federations. I think that's the important thing about this tournament as well, because while it's going to happen, the chance for it to be taken away from Qatar, even though I would argue that's what should have happened, that went years ago. But there's been no real calls for boycott, because even from that perspective, it's seen as, and I think this is justifiable, it's seen as unfair to put this burden on players for decisions not taken. Imagine if it's their only chance.
Well, I was going to ask you a little bit about that. So a lot of stuff isn't happening, right? You've mentioned federation not do. So we're probably going to just roll into this tournament. We'll have our opening ceremony, all the usual palaver that you get with big international sporting occasions. We still have unresolved issues with LGBT plus people. They have a lot of campaigning going on there. You've mentioned the migrant workers. A lot of just ordinary football fans are kind of hacked off because they don't like their domestic seasons being interrupted. There's a whole range of Premiership supporters who aren't particularly keen on this World Cup either because it's cutting into their season. So are all these issues going to be just backed up, and you're going to see people like the England manager Gareth Southgate or some of the other international managers sort of assail it? Like, in other words, who's this all going to fall upon when this tournament gets going? Because a lot of stuff isn't happening. It's still going to be a media story, so guys like yourself are going to be asking about it, but who are you going to actually ask? Because the only players that will be made available presumably will be the teams and their staff and so on.
Well, this is it. I mean, ultimately, it's the people who are put in front of us. And actually, one of the things we've been discussing in media is that David Beckham is a very expensive paid ambassador for this tournament when he doesn't really need to be. Are they going to put him up to take questions and all this? At this juncture, it seems unlikely. So we're going to be left with the managers, the players. That's unfair from one perspective. But equally, I think, and this is the point I was going to make there about, I don't think anyone expects them to boycott in that regard because it's unfair. I mean, imagine if Italia 90, say, had happened in Qatar, our great national moments kind of with all this around it. So it's unfair in them. But equally, I think if you're going to this tournament, there has to be an acceptance of what it is. And also, it shouldn't be overlooked that even if it's unfair in the players, they do have immense leverage. So if they're going, I think it's fair to expect them to use that leverage in some way, because that's the point of this campaign as well. It means there can be tangible change from this tournament, because compensation and investigation will make a genuine difference to the lives of workers. And because this isn't just a Qatar issue, this is across the Middle East. I mean, people go to Dubai on their holidays all the time. Well, the labour system there is very similar.
Now, in terms of the physical infrastructure, Miguel, and you may not know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, are the stadiums, are they all built, ready to go? So in other words, are these migrant issues current, are they legacy issues, or a bit of both? What's happening on the ground according to your own information?
So I was there in April for the draw, and this is a live discussion among media because, of course, we have to organise logistics. The stadiums are all pretty much sorted, which is why now, in the last few months in the build-up of the tournament, the focus from human rights groups actually turned to the infrastructure around the tournament and migrant worker issues there. And that's where, it's one of the tragic ironies of this. For all the issues in terms of just basic human rights for workers and what they've been denied, we still might have a tournament where the infrastructure is not quite ready for it. Because, if you look at it, we're going to have 1 million to 1.5 million people going to Qatar for this tournament. Yet there's only 44,000 hotel rooms in the country. And the entire tournament is going to be held in a region, I think it's the equivalent of Donabate to Bray.
Nice analogy.
Yeah, which sort of sums it up in a way. So I'm not sure if it's going to be prepared even on that level. But again, even that's really just a minor issue from what are really grave concerns about this tournament, and why I think it is justified to call it the most controversial sporting event in all time, and not least because it's the World Cup.
And one final brief question then. Harry Kane, the England captain, has said there's going to be, him and the team are going to mark the issues they have with the tournament. Do you expect much sort of visible protests from players or managers, or taking the knee type displays before matches, or do you think it's all a little bit kind of optical, really?
So this is the interesting thing, I suppose. And we just for that piece in The Independent, we did a survey of all the federations as to what they planned. Only less than half of them got back to us. Most of those were European, and they said that they're actually involved in the UEFA working group now, where they're going to try and come together with some sort of collective gesture. Now, human rights groups think that's, as I put in the piece, shirking responsibility, and that there is a fear that it will be just some superficial effort, and it'll almost be checkboxing or ticking off a checkbox.